Doge has identified more fraud within the government. Shocker, I know. The Department of Education, sayonara, and more local news for here in Texas. But I'm going to be switching up things this week. I'm going to be going over local news first, and then I'm going to be highlighting national news. First off, I was not here last week. I was enjoying spring break like many other Texans, and I made my trip down to Houston and enjoyed the rodeo, which that was one of my first times doing that, and I had a blast. So the Houston rodeo has officially wrapped up. The Austin rodeo will continue to go until March 29th. Fun for the whole family. I highly recommend it. You'll have a great time. Enjoy some food. Support small local businesses, restaurants. Go enjoy that. Texas Senate had met on Monday to vote on Senate Bill number 7, which, if approved, would provide $1 billion a year for the next 50 years to the Texas Water Fund, or TWF. That money is going to be used to generate infrastructure and repair water lines and introduce new waterways into the growing communities within Texas. The biggest shocker or surprise of that is the desalination plant that has been highlighted in Corpus Christi that they want to build to provide water for urban areas within Texas. So that'll be interesting to see the development if this bill does get passed. Georgetown, Texas will be hosting the Two Step In, which is a country music festival in the downtown San Gabriel Park. So if you live in the Austin area and would like to enjoy some family fun country music at the park, join the Two Step In. And that would be from the April 5th and 6th. Lastly, for local news, we have the MotoGP, which will be here at COTA, 28th, 29th, and 30th. So if you are a huge motorcycle fan, which I am, I unfortunately will not be attending this weekend, but MotoGP is here at Circus of the America. Fun for the whole family if you want to see some fun motorcycle action, MotoGP action at Circus of the America. Moving on now to national news. Doge, I'm going to save that one for last. President Trump has signed an executive order to dismantle the Department of Education. He has met with Linda McMahon, who is the education secretary, who has been assigned with assigning the various aspects of what the Department of Education handles and shifting those responsibilities to other government agencies. This has been met with a lot of confusion and a lot of questions on how the government is going to be handling these new responsibilities. So more to come on that. And then lastly, Doge has identified the problematic IRS modernization program that is 30 years behind and $15 billion over budget. This has been various contracts signed to contracting companies that have unfortunately failed to meet the needs of the government for the IRS. That's it for all of the news. I'm going to open it up to discussion, and I kind of wanted to go over some personal stories as far as that last part of Doge. So again, I work for Accenture, which is one of the largest consulting companies in the United States and the world. 8% of Accenture's revenue is generated from government contracts. And if I do say so myself, one of the first things that when I joined the company 6 years ago, I was always informed, get into government contracts because you'll just skate by in life. You can log in, do a couple hours of work, take a 2-3 hour, lunch break, come in, finish your work, and then you're done. You're done by 5 o'clock. Punch in, punch out, take your time. Now that they've identified that the IRS modernization is 30 years behind, this was initiated back in 1995, where the IRS needed to modernize their legacy systems to be more unified and honestly have a common programming language. They're still using COBOL, which is an antiquated system that you're not finding.
I've done COBOL programming.
Well, we need to hire Hilton. I can get you a job really quick
I'm a computer scientist. If Charles didn't know that, yes,
I do now.
Yeah, and COBOL's in very high demand. But the government can't seem to find a way. Well, for the past 30 years, they haven't seemed to find a way to link and communicate various aspects of their infrastructure to communicate to each other, which is leading to a lot of questions as far as, is this fraud or is this deliberate contract manipulation between these Accenture or between these contracting companies? I know personally, again, I've also handled statewide government projects. When the pandemic hit, I was a call center member for the state of Maryland's unemployment. And when the pandemic hit and everyone was forced to stay at home, you can imagine the amount of call volume that the unemployment department of the state of Maryland would receive for people that needed to call for unemployment benefits. And it was amazing to me when I first joined, the first week of joining that project, they taught us how to apply for or set a person up on one of the old legacy systems that they had, which was a black and green screen where you had to hit tab to shift over your cursor and enter in specific information. Halfway through that first month, they transitioned into, wasn't even the alpha, it was the beta system that one of the state departments had been in contract for past 20 years to develop a modern system to handle unemployment. 20 years, and it cost a couple $2 billion that the state of Maryland had been trying to implement this. And because of the pandemic, they were forced to bring this system out early. So I personally have seen firsthand the amount of waste and fraud that a lot of these contracting companies have been wasting government, because government is just a blank check.
a lot of what you mentioned there, Charles knows a lot.
I'm just kind of wondering if they charged for a calculator, but they provided an abacus for this. It's what it sounds like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I found it very eye-opening too when the CEO of Accenture had sent a company-wide email. And again, there's 750,000 plus members of Accenture worldwide. But she had mentioned that we literally have to, our Accenture contracts within the federal services has to justify their work. And they have to now basically send an email to Doge to justify the amount of work that they're doing. And she basically said, we're going to lose 8% of Accenture's revenue because we're not going to be able to justify it. It was very eye-opening that, and again, personally speaking to people who have worked on government projects as well as myself, the amount of just fraud. I'm just going to say it is fraud, because something that should have taken 1 to 2 years to implement has taken 30 plus years is insane. And obviously Accenture wasn't handling this specific contract, but there are various other contracts that other consulting companies have been handling, and it's all time-based. Oh, we'll get it to you done in 5 years. 5 years rolls around, like, hey, we're on the verge of a breakthrough. We need another 5 years. Write us another blank check, and we'll get it to you in 10 years. 10 years rolls around. We're still so close. We don't want to interrupt things. We need another 5 years. And it just snowballs into what it is right now. So yeah, that's that's my personal story as far as this whole Doge IRS debacle, as far as some of the fraud that we're seeing. Is there anything that anybody else wants to talk about that I brought up?
You're giving me the head nod. You
No,
might
I
throw
was
something out
asking you. Yeah.
I will say, I should preface this first. I am definitely not a big government person. I think anytime you get too big, you kind of write your own rules, no matter what you are. Yeah, I mean that's the whole
I agree with that.
problem. Yeah,
Yep.
and if you can't have accountability, that's an issue. I mean, we teach accountability when you're in kindergarten. You've got accountability taught to you. You know, you have to share. You have to put your toys away, things like that. But when you get older, apparently, accountability is just a word, and that's the problem I have with it. Is if you can't hold yourself accountable and someone else holds you accountable, and there's pushback, that usually tells me there's a problem, and that problem is probably deep seated. And here it's just it's we can open up Pandora's box, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to get political and all of that as well. I just
Right.
think that there's a lot of waste, and we all pay, and everyone's going to agree, we pay way too much in taxes for what we get. You know, I know there's other countries out there, they may pay 50, 51%. You know, let's take a look at England. You know, they've got basically half their income goes to taxes, but they've also got, healthcare taken care
47%.
of. Yeah, they've got a lot of other things added into it. But if you look at us, you can talk about taxation on this, taxation on that. We pay taxes 3, 4, 5 different times on money that we've already earned to pay taxes on. If you consider things like sales tax, you talk about property tax. There's a lot of components to it. All we want to know is, as a taxpayer, at least I do, where's my money going? Is it going to a good use, or is it just going to the ether? And that's what it sounds like you're talking about here. Is now you've got accountability, and if you can't hold yourself accountable and you can't justify the means for that money, then it's time to move on.
And it's not a politically motivated topic, but it is a topic that I feel like it is something that we need to talk about as tax-paying Americans.
Mm-hmm.
That our tax dollars are going to fund these projects, are going to fund these things, and you're telling me for the past 30 years you haven't been able to resolve a problem that should at max take 2 to 3 years or less, because we have some of the brightest minds in the world that are working on this, and it should not take 30 plus years to have some legacy systems to communicate to each other. It should not cost $15 billion.
I can talk a little bit about systems because I did computer science.
I learned about that just today. I was today years old when I learned
as a degree, and I've done COBOL, and I've done assembly, which COBOL is based on, and I know for a fact. A lot of I remember when I was working for IBM, we did a system for them. We're trying to incorporate like a system that was like modernized, but it had to communicate with COBOL coding because and that was for a credit card company. And it's really difficult, and
COBOL has its limitations.
it has. It's very low machine processing power. And the reason is because all the investment that was done back in the 70s was mainframes. And
Right.
COBOL is the language of mainframe. So back in 1995, there was a huge task force to try to not get all the systems stopped because of the millennium bug, whatever it was called in here, because the 4-digit,
Right.
going from 1999 to 2000, and dates would go back to 1900 instead of 2000 because it would go 00. That would be a problem. People would think there's going to be blackouts and whatnot. There was a huge task force to try and make COBOL to really understand and create the expansion in memory, because it's limited. At the time, it was state of the art, but nowadays, or even in the 2000s, there was like better computers, right? But they're not very robust in comparison to what the mainframe was still, and to be able to process information fast. So today we have our cell phones can do faster processing than a mainframe, So it is really difficult when you have something that is working and processing the information to move it, to a different type of server or something like that. So, but yes, 25 years has passed since the millennium, bug, because we are in 2025, and learning from you right now that is still on mainframe, it's really like, hey, 2005, they could have had people from 2000 to 2005 reprogramming all the systems and doing in different types of computers. Like, you can, because you could, like, I work for banks, like, and you can put like 60 computers, plugged together, processing information that would process as fast as one mainframe, right? So, and now one computer can do that all, maybe
Right.
with 25% of the processing power, something like that. And then that would be already modernized. So it does. I understand government is like, Titanic. You see an iceberg, and then you get like, I'm gonna hit, and I don't know what's gonna happen.
Right.
So
My whole point, and I feel like I don't want to jump on the Doge bandwagon as far as like being a fanboy, but I am kind of a fanboy of the fact of like, we need to identify waste within the government and start trimming some of these things, trimming back, like they've already identified how our tax money is going to these NGOs that's sending money, our taxpayer money elsewhere that are, in my opinion, not aligned to certain beliefs that I believe in. Right. But this is something that is completely, I mean, relevant and in your face, as far as like our tax dollar money has been funding this for 30 years to get it to a modern state, and it's failed, and I think more governments need to have a Doge, whatever you call it, tax force to go in there and start looking at where is the fraud, where is the waste, and what can we do to solve this issue and improvise, or not improvise, but modernize our systems so that we can save the people of the country money. That's ultimately what it is. We are paying the government. The government should do everything in its power to return the favor back to us and be like, listen, you guys are giving us X amount of dollars. We're going to make your lives easier in one way or another. That's my whole thing.
it needs a little bit of a mindset to really poke that to make this happen. And I think it could happen now. I don't know.
Well, it is happening now with Doge. But yeah, that was my whole spiel. Sorry, I just wanted to have my soapbox for a little bit of personal experiences and stuff like that. And I know, Charles, you've dealt with it too as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I love this. I mean, this is a whole different conversation right here. And I just relate it to, let's just make it much more personal. You have your family budget, right?
Right.
And you've only got so much money to work with. And so you're going to have to cut things if your budget is this, but your spending is this. And for the people at home, I'm moving my hands a little bit differently here. And so, those are tough conversations to have, just like Doge is a tough conversation to have. And if your daughter, your son has some of their spending cut, they're going to push back. And you see a lot of pushback from people who are sitting there wanting the money that they're used to getting, and they're not getting any longer.
Right.
And that's where I think there's a polarization in it, because I mean that's all you hear about the past couple of weeks. I mean, wasn't there just a bomb threat at Tesla in Austin here?
Yeah.
Why? Well, who's heading up Doge? And that's the pushback that you're going to get. And I think that relates a lot to, I listen to this podcast. I love podcasts. Matter of fact, I'm going to start listening to this one.
Sound good.
Yeah, but yeah, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard about this Ballerini florist. The guy was a computer scientist at one point in time. But it was about tribalism. And it's,
Yes.
you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
This is amazing stuff to me because it was talking about how when we were, you know, we as a human society, we're in tribes, we're in constant conflict with each other. And then what happens, like the United States, an example, those tribes collected, the 13 states got together, those tribes got together to fight a common enemy, and now you've got this huge tribe that is a force to be reckoned with.
Right.
And then what happens? Now you've got individualization, which was a tough one for me, and these separate tribes forming inside the United States, which is slowly tearing us apart. And a lot of it is being exacerbated by Doge. The tribes are coming out in full force. And the problem with that is, you know, a divided house falls. And I think we
Right.
can all agree with that. I mean, that's from Abraham Lincoln right there, you know, a house united. And I think we're seeing a lot of that. And the problem is people don't want to be held accountable. I mean, as a kid, when I was a teenager, I did stupid things, right? But I didn't want to be held accountable for it. My parents held me accountable for it. I'd push back, but I knew they were right. Same thing right here. If you can't be held accountable, you're going to push back. But in the end, you know what's right. And if you don't know what's right, then that's a different conversation altogether.
Yeah, that is
Right. Right.
it is a personal issue, right?
Mm.
It's a personal issue. Yeah.
Yeah, whenever you talk about money, it becomes very personal, very quick.
George, I'm waiting, George.
Yeah. Every mammoth institution, right, moves really fast, really slow. And the American government, for its size, for what it represents to the world, is maybe one of the slowest, and it shouldn't be the one of the slowest. You know, I understand it takes time to decide which technology you're gonna use it, because every option, every trade-off, it's something you sacrifice. You know, so how do you choose the right technology at the right moment? Right now, we are in a shifty moment, right, where we have basically algorithms and AIs and controlling so much. Definitely, it is the right time to also implement that. Maybe they are not doing it yet because the real technology, the real transformation, which is the quantum computers and everything, are just around the corner. So you invest 3 trillion now, and then if you wait 2 years and you have the technology, that will save you for 50 years. So it is a hard decision to make it, but 30 years is too much. You know, think about, it's like us using the same Macintosh that I had in the 90s.
An iPhone 1.
I still
You have
have
to
my
use it.
Macs, right?
iPhone 1 was modern. But you know, just
Nokia.
commenting on what George just said,
Took that.
and actually I have a comment on that because, yes, for example, I worked for a company in Brazil, it's a bank, that was part of the AIG bank, AIG World, because you know they had a bank in Brazil. So basically, the corporate and legacy team of the bank in Brazil, and all they had to do is like write a system to quote for aircraft insurance. Not is it insurance? Yes, insurance, like aircraft insurance. So they asked the president of the company 2 years to do it, and then the VP, he was the guy that I reported directly, and then he, on that meeting, he told the president, like, hey, I have a guy. And it's me flexing now. I have a guy that can do in 6 months. And then I was like, it's kind of impossible for a team of 20 people asking for 2 years, and then you want me to do in 6 months? I did in 4. Right? But I wrote the whole system.
Humble brag.
Yeah. Shout out to me. I did in 4 months a quoting system. Of course, not only me. I had Marcelo with me, and he was the system analyst, and I was the developer. And we stopped the project that we were doing. It was a business intelligence project to do that, and it took me 4 months to do. And I did a presentation, and the president of the company was like, "How did you do it?" When I met the VP of development, he looked at me, and I had participated on an interview with him, 6 months prior, maybe more, 8 months prior, something like that. And then he looked at me, I was like, "Oh, it's you," because I was developing on a new technology at the time, and the whole bank was using an older technology. So, and then he understood how and why I could do it a little faster, right?
And I think that's indicative of a lot of business decisions. Everyone always shoots high. Someone comes in low.
You try to meet in the middle.
And then you try and either meet in the middle or expectations are completely met before that breakdown. I mean, I use the example of Elon Musk where he had to bring in mainframes. He reached out to Oracle. Oracle said it would take about a year to 2 years to bring in and install these new mainframe systems. Not mainframe systems, but computing processors.
Yeah, servers, yeah.
Servers.
But the thing is, because it takes time for migrating and testing and all of that, and I understand that.
Correct.
Yeah, and it does take a long time. It's not quick.
But Elon Musk did it in 5 days. He hand-delivered, rented a moving truck, grabbed the servers from Oracle, and installed it into, I believe it's in Memphis, where they have their server station held. He did it in 5 days. The point is, there's always ingenuity to solve problems. And when you give somebody something high and then shoot low, a lot of times you can solve that issue before even that low. And most times it might go past that in some situations. There might be, acts of God that,
it's not that. It's using the right technology, and then he has access to those technologies.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So,
but I mean,
it makes a difference.
From 1 to 2 year estimation,
And the
to
government,
5 days.
Yeah, but that's the thing.
That's a huge thing.
Well, it is, but it wasn't like one guy. It was a team.
It's a team.
So
Yeah.
if you imagine the government now that has a team of 200 people, and then Elon Musk coming, with a team of quite a few people, to do that, yes, he can do in 5 days using new technology
Right.
of today's market. So the more we progress with technology and AI and everything else, of course these things will get much faster, but you need an outside eye to be able to do that. It cannot be done with the same eyes. So and that's the thing. And every single company that does development, my sister is a VP of development at Expedia, right? And she has to use vendors, because the vendors will always bring new things so that they can incorporate with their own W-2s. Because if they do not do that, they'll be left off, because they are a private, company, but they're public, they're not government company, they're public, traded company. So they have to be all the time at the peak of technology. So if they do not bring vendors and third parties, so they will never experience new technologies. Because if they just work within, it's always going to be, no, we've been doing these with these, so I just need 2 months to do this. New technology may be able to do in 1 day or 2. You know what I mean?
Right. No, that's a valid point.
And to bring that full circle here, you were talking about 30 years for the IRS.
Right.
Everything you just said was about technology advancement, quickening, bringing on new eyes and things, would completely tell me, refute everything that it should take 30 years. I mean, that's the whole point, is you've got technology. I mean, my God. First off, trigger warning that Y2K was 25 years ago. That caught me off guard. I'm going to be honest. That made me take an extra sip and go, shit, I'm old. But think of all the technology we have experienced. I mean, you mentioned iPhone 1. That was, 2007, right?
Yeah.
2007.
Before that, we had
Yes.
flip phones, Nokia, and all that stuff. Think of all the technology. And if it's still worth 30 plus years behind on certain aspects in our government, that just tells me your focus isn't where it should be.
It isn't.
And why isn't it? That's the question I think we should be asking,
Government-
is why isn't your focus where it should be? If you want a faster aircraft. You want a more stealth aircraft. Guess what? I'm sorry. If I snap, does that stop it? No.
No.
It's only you.
No.
If you snap, you got the magic
I'm the
fingers.
snapper.
Okay, sorry. I'll clap.
You can
It's
snap.
That's my
Yeah.
thing, Charles.
I don't want to steal your thing, but it happens almost overnight. You know, we've got
Right.
drones flying over New Jersey.
Government is a
But-
dinosaur. It
Yeah.
needs an asteroid.
If government's only a dinosaur in certain areas. When talk about our military is always cutting edge, but
Yeah.
the money that funds the government is
Yeah.
30 years behind, and therein lies the problem. Why is that a problem? Because my guess is certain entities are getting paid by this being a dinosaur and this being fast.
Yes. Yes. That's
Absolutely.
beautiful. That's
And
beautiful.
that's the nice thing about Doge is they're pointing that out, but people don't like to be called out. If you're messing up, and you don't want, if you're playing in the dark, you don't want the light switch turned on.
Correct. God, Charles has come up with like one-liners left and right all episodes. Like,
It's not me. It is the center stage.
It's our final shout out
You might
of
wanna
the
grab
episode.
yourself a bottle.
Yeah, it's a shout out to Sandy Stage. Yeah.
That's awesome.
well, that's. I mean, is there anything else?
Remarks, Dylan, you didn't say anything.
I thought the water thing was really interesting, but the Texas Water Fund.
Lots of heavy hitting topics here. I will say I'm very much looking forward to that 2-step in Georgetown. I am a very big fan of country music, and you might find me there. So I know you're
Right
not
on.
Konrad, so you might not find me there, but maybe I'll attend.
Well, right on. Very cool.
Everything else was super interesting. Yeah, I think we talked about it. I don't know what else I can add. The water is cool. Desalinization is very expensive, so
It is.
that's the reason why it's
Yeah.
not used all over.
It is.
But for that to hit a place like Corpus Christi and to be able to make its way into more rural areas, it's a cool thing. Very expensive to do though. Lots of energy.
I think it's a really interesting topic, especially since I can say it since being here, the climate has shifted where a lot of parts of Texas are more desert as opposed to being green rolling hills or the green farmlands that Texas once was before. And I feel like water is going to be a valuable resource, especially since there are so many people coming to this great state of Texas. I myself am an implant from California. I apologize already.
Damn
but
you.
I know, I understand.
I'm just
But I've fully brought in and bought into this whole Texas mentality, and I'm here for it. You know.
Well, your
Yeehaw.
brother,
Yeah.
your brother is on cowboy hats and boots all the time.
He is. I'm the only resident Texan of this podcast, and I will say, I can't speak for all of us. We are very welcoming of everybody coming in. We like to see growth. We like to see differences of culture. We love that. We need water. And then we all live in Central Texas. We have water droughts. Our Lake Travis is very low.
Yeah.
We have water restrictions in our communities.
All the time.
Can't run your sprinkler system when you want to in the summer. So that would be something that would
Oh damn.
affect everybody's lives immediately. If we had access to water all the time, bring it in, fill up our lakes.
I have no grass in my house now in the front because of the freaking. I can't turn.
Gonna have to zero-scape it like Arizona.
Yeah,
I was
Just
gonna
put some
say
turf
yeah.
in, man.
Ugh.
And I know a guy.
I do know a guy also. Yeah.
You step on turf. You do turf.
We
We
can
can
do
outsource.
artificial turf. Yes, we have access to
Actually,
that.
we can do it, but
Yeah.
I would prefer to give that business
Yeah.
to one of our good friends.
Yeah, we have
Oh,
we have
that-
some friends to refer
Love
to.
that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good.
A couple of friends actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
That's it.
that's about it.
That's Conrad's news segment of the week. Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much for joining us, and we will see you next week.
Awesome.
Goodbye.
Bye.